The chains bit into Nora Adams' wrists as she stood trembling on the wooden platform in the center of Redemption Springs. Her wedding dress torn and soiled with the dust of the 3-day journey that had brought her to this moment of public humiliation in the summer of 1879. Blood trickled from her split lip, evidence of her new husband's temper, while the townsfolk gathered to witness her punishment for attempting to flee her marriage after just 2 days. Nora had never imagined her life would come to this when she'd agreed to marry Harold Blackwood, the wealthy cattle baron who'd promised her dying father he would care for her. At 22, she'd thought the arrangement practical, even if love was absent. But Harold's true nature had revealed itself on their wedding night, his cruelty matched only by his possessiveness. "Let this be a lesson," Harold announced to the crowd, his voice carrying across the town square. "No wife of mine disobeys without consequences." The summer heat beat down mercilessly as Nora fought against the tears threatening to spill. She wouldn't give Harold the satisfaction. The bruises on her arms and face told the story her pride wouldn't allow her to voice. Among the onlookers, a tall figure leaned against a hitching post, his face partially obscured by a worn leather hat. Lucas Xavier had only arrived in Redemption Springs that morning, seeking nothing more than a hot meal and perhaps work with one of the local ranches. What he found instead was a town gathering to witness a spectacle that turned his stomach. "Ain't right," muttered an old-timer beside him. "Blackwood's always been mean as a rattler, but this is a new low even for him." Lucas straightened, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. At 30, he'd seen enough of the frontier's brutality to know when to walk away from trouble. This, however, stirred something in him he couldn't ignore. "Who's the woman?" he asked quietly. "Blackwood's new bride, daughter of James Adams, God rest his soul." Poor girl probably thought marrying Blackwood would give her security after her pa passed. Instead, she got herself a monster. Lucas watched as Blackwood circled Nora like a predator, lecturing the crowd about wifely duties and obedience. The woman's dignity in the face of such humiliation stirred something primal in Lucas's chest. "That ain't no way to treat a lady," he said, pushing away from the post. The old-timer grabbed his arm. "I wouldn't, son. Blackwood owns half this county and the sheriff besides." But Lucas was already moving, cutting through the crowd with determined strides. Years of drifting from town to town had taught him to keep his head down, but some things a man couldn't ride past. "Folks of Redemption Springs," Blackwood continued, his voice booming, "let this serve as 'that's enough,'" Lucas called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed crowd. Blackwood turned, his face darkening at the interruption. "This doesn't concern you, stranger." Lucas stopped at the edge of the platform, meeting Nora's gaze for the first time. Her eyes, a startling shade of green, were dry despite her ordeal, defiance clear in their depths. "When a man chains a woman in public, it concerns any decent folk who witness it," Lucas replied, his hand resting casually near his gun. A murmur ran through the crowd. No one had ever dared challenge Harold Blackwood so openly. "This is my wife," Blackwood snarled, "and how I discipline her is my business." "No man has the right to treat another human being like property," Lucas countered, climbing onto the platform. "Especially not a woman he vowed to cherish." Nora stared at the stranger, his words stirring something she'd thought beaten out of her over the past days. Hope, dangerous and fragile, flickered to life. "You're trespassing on dangerous ground, Cowboy," Blackwood warned, motioning to his men who stood at the edges of the crowd. "I suggest you move along before you find yourself in a pine box." Lucas ignored the threat, addressing Nora directly. "Madam, did you choose to stand here in chains today?" Before she could answer, Blackwood stepped between them. "She doesn't need to answer to you." "I believe the lady can speak for herself," Lucas said evenly. "No," Nora said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I did not choose this." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful, that's what I thought," Lucas interrupted, drawing his knife. The crowd gasped, but instead of threatening Blackwood, he moved toward Nora's chains. "Stop him," Blackwood bellowed. Two of Blackwood's men rushed forward, but Lucas was faster. With 3 quick strikes, he broke the links binding Nora's wrists, the metal falling away as the crowd watched in stunned silence. "You can't do that." Blackwood lunged forward, but Lucas stepped between him and Nora. "It's already done," Lucas said calmly, "and I'm giving this lady a choice." Nora rubbed her raw wrists, scarcely believing what was happening. The stranger's eyes met hers again, and something passed between them, an understanding, a promise. "Madam," Lucas said, "you can stay with this man who treats you worse than livestock, or you can walk away right now. Your choice." The town square had fallen completely silent. Even the birds seemed to hold their songs as everyone waited for her response. "She's my wife," Blackwood hissed. "By law, she belongs to me." "No human belongs to another," Lucas replied without looking away from Nora. "Not in any law that matters." Nora stood taller, looking at the faces surrounding them. Some showed shock, others curiosity, and a few, mostly women, reflected something that looked like hope. "I choose to leave," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I choose freedom." Before Blackwood could react, Lucas took her elbow gently and guided her toward the platform steps. Blackwood's hand shot out, grabbing Nora's arm roughly. "You're not going anywhere, you stupid." Lucas's fist connected with Blackwood's jaw before he could finish, sending the larger man staggering backward. The crowd gasped as Blackwood fell hard onto the wooden platform. "Touch her again," Lucas said, his voice dangerously soft, "and the next hit won't be so gentle." Blackwood scrambled to his feet, blood trickling from his split lip, a mirror to the wound he'd inflicted on Nora. "Sheriff," he bellowed, "arrest this man." A middle-aged man wearing a tin star pushed through the crowd. "What's the trouble, Harold? This drifter assaulted me and is attempting to steal my wife. I want him in jail." The sheriff looked from Blackwood to Lucas, then to Nora's bruised face and the broken chains at her feet. His expression revealed his conflict. "Sheriff," Lucas said, "this woman has been beaten and chained in public. I'm offering her safe passage away from her abuser. That's not theft, it's basic human decency." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Nora sensed a shift in the air, disapproval directed not at her rescuer but at Blackwood. "Harold," the sheriff said slowly, "chaining a woman in the town square, it don't look good." "She's my wife," Blackwood repeated, as if that explained everything. An older woman stepped forward from the crowd. "Being a wife don't mean being a prisoner, Harold Blackwood. My Henry was married to me 40 years, God rest him, and never once raised a hand to me." Others began to voice similar sentiments. The tide was turning. "Sheriff," Lucas said, "we're leaving peacefully. If Mr. Blackwood wants to press charges, he can find us later." He turned to Nora. "Are you ready?" She nodded, hardly daring to believe this was happening. Blackwood lunged forward again, reaching for his gun. "Nobody takes what's mine." The sheriff moved faster than his appearance suggested possible, grabbing Blackwood's arm. "That's enough, Harold. You pull that gun and I'll have to take you in." "You work for me," Blackwood snarled. "I work for the law," the sheriff replied, his patience visibly thinning. "And right now, you're the one causing a disturbance." Taking advantage of the distraction, Lucas guided Nora through the crowd toward the livery stable where his horse waited. She stumbled once, her legs weak from standing so long, and he steadied her with a gentle hand. "Why are you helping me?" She whispered. "Because it's right," he answered simply, "and because no one else was going to." At the livery, Lucas quickly saddled his horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding. "Can you ride?" "Yes," Nora said. "My father taught me." "Good." He helped her mount, then swung up behind her. "We need to put some distance between us and town before Blackwood gathers his men." As they rode out, Nora could hear Blackwood's angry shouts fading behind them. She held tightly to the saddle horn, scarcely believing her sudden change in circumstances. The stranger's chest was warm against her back, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins, creating a circle that felt strangely like protection. They rode hard for several hours, following the river northward through stands of cottonwood and pine. Only when the sun began to set did Lucas finally slow their pace, guiding the horse into a sheltered grove near the water. "We'll camp here," he said, dismounting and helping Nora down. "Blackwood will be searching the main trails, but this spot is hidden enough." Nora's legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground. The last 3 days had taken their toll, and now that the immediate danger had passed, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Lucas caught her elbow. "Easy now. Let's get you sitting down." He helped her to a fallen log, then busied himself gathering firewood and setting up a small camp. Nora watched him work, still trying to understand why this stranger had risked everything to help her. "I don't even know your name," she said finally. He paused in his work. "Lucas Xavier." "Most folks call me Luke." "Nora Adams," she hesitated. "Not Blackwood, never Blackwood." Lucas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Adams. You could have been killed today," she said quietly. "Blackwood has killed men for less than what you did." Lucas shrugged, striking a match to light the small fire he'd built. "Some things are worth the risk." As the flames caught and grew, Nora studied him in the flickering light. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but his face had character: strong jaw, straight nose that had clearly been broken at least once, and eyes the color of a summer sky. His hands were calloused but gentle as he arranged their meager supplies. "Are you hungry?" he asked, pulling jerky and hardtack from his saddlebags. Nora realized she hadn't eaten since the previous evening. "Yes, thank you." They ate in companionable silence as darkness settled around them. The sounds of the night crickets chirping, the soft gurgle of the river, an occasional owl's call created a peaceful backdrop so different from the tension of the town square. "What will you do now?" Lucas asked eventually. Nora stared into the fire. "I don't know. I can't go back to Redemption Springs, and I have no family left." She touched her bruised cheek absently. "I have some skills. I can sew, cook, read, and write. Perhaps I could find work in another town." "Blackwood won't give up easily," Lucas warned. "Men like him consider their pride worth more than a woman's life." "I know." Nora shivered despite the warm evening. "But I'd rather die free than live as his possession." Lucas nodded, respect evident in his expression. "I'm heading north to Montana Territory. There's work there for a man good with horses, and the law doesn't ask too many questions about a person's past." He hesitated. "You'd be welcome to travel with me, at least until you find somewhere you want to stay." Nora studied him, searching for ulterior motives but finding only sincerity. "Why would you do that? You've already risked enough for a stranger." "Maybe I'm tired of traveling alone," he said with a slight smile. "Or maybe I just want to make sure the bravest woman I've ever met gets a fair chance at freedom." Something warm unfurled in Nora's chest at his words. "You think I'm brave?" Standing there in chains, refusing to break. "Yes, I'd call that brave." His gaze was steady. "Most folks would have given in, but you held onto your dignity." Nora looked down at her hands, embarrassed by his praise. "I was terrified." "Courage isn't about not feeling fear," Lucas said quietly. "It's about facing it head-on anyway." They fell silent again, the crackling fire the only sound between them. Nora felt her eyelids growing heavy, days of fear and exhaustion catching up with her. "You should rest," Lucas said, noticing her fatigue. "I'll keep watch." "You need sleep too," she protested. "I'll wake you in a few hours to take your turn," he promised, though they both knew he wouldn't. Nora hesitated, then accepted the bedroll he offered. As she settled onto the ground near the fire, Lucas removed his coat and placed it gently over her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." "Get some sleep, Miss Adams. Tomorrow's a new day." Nora closed her eyes, feeling safe for the first time in weeks. As she drifted off, she wondered what tomorrow would bring and what kind of man Lucas Xavier really was. But those were questions for morning. For now, the simple gift of freedom was enough. Dawn broke with a chorus of birdsong, rousing Nora from the deepest sleep she'd had in days. For a moment, disorientation gripped her, the open sky above instead of a ceiling, the smell of pine and wood smoke instead of Harold's expensive cologne. Then memory returned, and with it, a rush of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. She sat up to find Lucas already awake, tending a small fire where coffee brewed in a battered pot. He glanced up as she stirred, offering a brief smile that transformed his weathered face. "Morning," he said. "Hope you slept well." "Better than I have in weeks," Nora admitted, running a hand through her tangled hair. She was acutely aware of her appearance, the torn wedding dress, now stained with dirt and blood, her unwashed face, the bruises that surely looked worse in daylight. Lucas seemed to read her thoughts. "River's just over that rise if you want to freshen up. I'll keep my back turned." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a clean but worn shirt and a pair of trousers. "These will be too big, but they're better than riding all day in that dress." Nora accepted the clothes gratefully. "You've thought of everything." "Just the necessities," he replied with a shrug. "Coffee will be ready when you return." The cold river water was shocking but welcome as Nora washed her face and arms, carefully avoiding the tender bruises. The wedding dress, once her proudest possession, she now viewed with nothing but revulsion. She removed it without regret, rinsing herself as best she could before donning Lucas's clothes. The shirt hung to mid-thigh, and she had to roll the trousers up several times and cinch them tight with a piece of rope. But the sensation of wearing practical clothing instead of restrictive feminine garments was liberating. She used a strip torn from the wedding dress to bind her hair back, then bundled the rest of the garment under a rock in the river. Let the current take it away, along with the brief, terrible chapter of her life it represented. When she returned to camp, Lucas had the horses saddled and breakfast jerky and hardtack again laid out on a flat rock. He glanced up, his eyes widening slightly at her transformed appearance before he quickly looked away. "Suits you," he said simply, pouring coffee into a tin cup for her. They ate quickly, both aware of the need to distance themselves further from Redemption Springs. As they packed up camp, Lucas outlined his plan. "There's a trading post about a day's ride north where we can get supplies and proper clothes for you. From there, we'll head northwest toward Montana Territory. It's rough country, but there are growing settlements where a person can make a fresh start." "Do you think Blackwood will follow us that far?" Nora asked. Lucas secured the last of their supplies to his saddle before answering. "Men like Blackwood don't let go of grudges easily. But the farther we get from his sphere of influence, the safer we'll be." They mounted up Nora on Lucas's buckskin, while he rode a bay mare he'd purchased in town before their escape and set off northward again, keeping to the wooded areas along the river rather than the more exposed trails. As they rode, Nora found herself studying her unlikely protector. Lucas Xavier was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. The careful way he scouted their path, his consideration for her comfort despite their need for haste, the respectful distance he maintained all painted a picture of a man with a strong moral compass. "Have you always been a drifter?" she asked as they paused to rest the horses around midday. Lucas took a drink from his canteen before answering. "Not always. Had a small spread in Colorado once raising horses." "What happened to it?" A shadow crossed his face. "Lost it in '73 during the panic. Banks called in loans and a lot of small ranchers went under." He shrugged as if it didn't matter anymore. "Been working my way from ranch to ranch since then, saving up to try again someday." "I'm sorry," Nora said. "Don't be." "I learned a lot about people during those hard times, who stands by their word and who doesn't. Valuable education, even if the tuition was steep." He squinted at the sun. "We should keep moving." They continued north, the landscape gradually changing as they rode. The flat plains gave way to rolling hills covered with ponderosa pine and aspen groves. By late afternoon, Nora's body ached from the unaccustomed hours in the saddle, but she refused to complain. "There's a clearing up ahead," Lucas called back to her. "Good spot to make camp for the night." The clearing offered a view of the valley below while providing shelter from the wind that had picked up as evening approached. Lucas helped Nora dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist, and she tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach at his touch. "Thank you," she said, stepping back quickly. "I can gather firewood while you see to the horses." He nodded, and they fell into an efficient routine setting up camp. As darkness fell, they sat by the fire eating the last of Lucas's provisions, beans warmed in the can, and more hardtack. "Tell me about your family," Lucas said unexpectedly, "if you don't mind talking about them." Nora poked at the fire with a stick. "Not much to tell. My mother died when I was 12, consumption. My father raised me on his own. He was a schoolteacher in Ohio before we moved west when I was 16. He believed the mountain air would be good for his health." She smiled sadly. "It wasn't. His heart gave out 6 months ago." "I'm sorry," Lucas said quietly. "He was a good man, kind, educated. He taught me to love books and learning." She sighed. "After he died, the debts started appearing. I didn't know he'd borrowed money to pay for doctors. That's when Harold Blackwood appeared, offering to settle everything if I married him." "You had no other options?" "None that I could see at the time." Nora stared into the flames. "Blackwood presented himself as a respectable widower seeking companionship. By the time I saw his true nature, it was too late. We were already at the altar." Lucas's expression darkened. "When did he first hit you?" "Our wedding night." Nora's voice dropped to a whisper. "I wasn't enthusiastic enough about my wifely duties." Lucas swore under his breath. "No man has the right, I know that now," Nora interrupted. "That's why I tried to run. I'd rather face uncertainty than live with certainty of cruelty." She looked up at him. "What about you? Any family?" "Parents died in a fever outbreak when I was 19. No siblings." His tone was matter-of-fact, but Nora sensed old pain beneath the words. "Had a girl once, back in Colorado. She chose the banker's son when my ranch failed. Her loss," Nora said without thinking, then blushed at her boldness. Lucas's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Kind of you to say so." They fell silent, the crackling fire and night sounds creating a comfortable backdrop. Nora found herself relaxing in Lucas's presence in a way she hadn't with anyone since her father died. There was something solid about him, a reliability that went bone deep. "We should reach the trading post by midday tomorrow," Lucas said eventually. "You should get some rest." Nora nodded, settling onto the bedroll he'd again insisted she take. As she drifted towards sleep, she realized that for the first time in months, she was looking forward to tomorrow rather than dreading it. The trading post turned out to be a collection of log buildings nestled in a valley where 2 rivers met. A general store, blacksmith shop, and small saloon comprised the entirety of what the hand-painted sign proclaimed as Riverford. Lucas led them straight to the general store, tying their horses at the hitching post outside. "Wait here a moment," he said to Nora. "Let me make sure it's safe." She watched through the window as he spoke with the shopkeeper, an older man with spectacles and a full beard. After a few minutes, Lucas motioned for her to join them. "Nora, this is Mr. Hollister. He owns the store and has agreed to help us." Mr. Hollister nodded respectfully. "Any friend of Luke's is welcome here. My wife's in the back room and can help you find some proper clothes, miss." "Thank you," Nora said, relief washing over her at the prospect of female company and clean garments. "Mrs. Hollister turned out to be a plump, motherly woman who clucked sympathetically at Nora's bruises but asked no questions. She helped Nora select a practical riding skirt, 2 cotton blouses, undergarments, and a serviceable coat. While Nora changed, Mrs. Hollister heated water for her to wash properly. "That young man of yours seems decent," Mrs. Hollister commented as she helped Nora comb the tangles from her hair. "Oh, he's not we're just traveling together," Nora stammered. Mrs. Hollister gave her a knowing look. "If you say so, dear. But I've been watching folks pass through for 30 years, and I know a protective man when I see one." When Nora emerged from the back room, clean and properly dressed for the first time in days, she found Lucas and Mr. Hollister deep in conversation over a map spread on the counter. Lucas glanced up, his expression changing subtly as he took in her appearance. "Better?" he asked. "Much," she replied, suddenly self-conscious under his gaze. Mr. Hollister rolled up the map and handed it to Lucas. "That route should keep you away from the main trails but still get you to Helena before winter sets in." "I appreciate the advice," Lucas said, paying for their supplies. "And the discretion." "Word travels," Mr. Hollister warned. "Man like Blackwood has connections." "But you've got a good head start, and not everyone's sympathetic to his type." They left Riverford with saddlebags full of supplies and fresh horses Lucas had traded in the bay mare for a stronger gelding more suited to mountain travel. Nora now rode her own mount, a gentle dun mare that Mr. Hollister had assured them could handle the terrain ahead. As they rode northwestward, following the route Mr. Hollister had suggested, the landscape grew increasingly dramatic. Towering pines gave way to rugged mountains in the distance, their peaks still snow-capped despite the summer heat. "It's beautiful," Nora breathed, taking in the wild scenery. "Different from Ohio, I expect," Lucas commented. "In every way imaginable," she patted her mare's neck. "I never thought I'd see country like this. Montana's even more spectacular. Big sky country, they call it." For the next week, they settled into a comfortable routine. Riding by day, camping at night, taking turns with the cooking and other chores. Lucas taught Nora how to build a proper fire, set snares for rabbits, and identify which plants were safe to eat. She shared stories from the books she'd read, and taught him a few songs her father had loved. With each passing day, Nora felt stronger, more capable. The bruises faded, both the visible ones and those that marked her spirit. And with their healing came a growing awareness of Lucas that had nothing to do with gratitude. She noticed the way the sunlight caught in his dark hair, the gentle way he handled the horses, how his rare smiles transformed his entire face. At night, sitting across the fire from him, she found herself imagining what it would be like to close the distance between them. For his part, Lucas maintained a respectful distance, treating her with unfailing courtesy. But sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unguarded in those brief moments. On their 9th day of travel, they crested a ridge to find a vast valley spread before them, a silver ribbon of river winding through its center. In the distance, the faint outline of a town was visible. "That's Helena," Lucas said. 2, maybe 3 more days' ride. Nora felt a sudden pang at the thought of their journey ending. In Helena, Lucas would find work on a ranch and she would need to make her own way. The inevitability of separation settled heavy in her chest. "What will you do once we reach town?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Lucas adjusted his hat, squinting at the horizon. "There's a ranch north of Helena where I worked a few years back. Owner's a fair man, always said I'd be welcome if I passed through again." He glanced at her. "What about you?" Nora shrugged, suddenly uncertain. "Find work, I suppose, as a seamstress perhaps, or in a shop." Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable. "Helena's growing fast." "Plenty of opportunities for someone with your education." They made camp early that evening, sheltered in a grove of aspens near a clear stream. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Nora found herself unusually quiet, preoccupied with thoughts of the future. "Penny for your thoughts," Lucas said, handing her a cup of coffee as he settled beside her on a fallen log. "I was just thinking about Helena," she admitted, "and what comes after." Lucas stared into his own cup. "You'll do well there. It's a decent town, growing fast but still civilized. And you'll go to this ranch you mentioned. That's the plan." He hesitated. "Unless something better comes along." Nora's heart quickened at his words and the way he looked at her when he said them. "What would constitute something better?" she asked softly. Lucas set his cup down, turning to face her fully. "Nora," he began, then stopped, searching for words. "These past days traveling with you, they've been the best I've had in years." "For me as well," she whispered. "I know you've been through hell, and the last thing you need is another man making demands or assumptions." His eyes held her steadily. But I'd be lying if I said I was ready to just ride away once we reach Helena. Nora's breath caught. What are you saying, Lucas? I'm saying I care for you. More than I expected to, more than is probably wise. He ran a hand through his hair in a gesture she'd come to recognize as nervousness. I'm not Blackwood. I don't have wealth or property. All I can offer is hard work and the promise that I'd never treat you as anything less than my equal. Tears pricked Nora's eyes. Lucas Xavier, are you proposing to me? A slow smile spread across his face. I suppose I am, though I'm making a mess of it. Nora laughed, a sound of pure joy that surprised them both. You've saved my life, protected me, taught me to survive in the wilderness and treated me with nothing but respect. I'd say that's a fine foundation for a proposal. Hope dawned in Lucas's eyes. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, Nora closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened as Lucas's arms came around her, drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. That, Nora said, was definitely a yes. Lucas's answering smile was brighter than the campfire. I promise you won't regret it. I know I won't. She rested her head against his shoulder. But we should wait until we reach Helena to make it official. I want to do things properly this time. Agreed, Lucas said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Though it'll be the longest 3 days of my life. They reached Helena on a crisp autumn morning, the town bustling with activity as miners, merchants, and settlers went about their business. The main street boasted buildings more substantial than Nora had expected: brick stores, a hotel, several saloons, and a whitewashed church at the far end. It's larger than I imagined, Nora commented as they rode down the busy street. Gold and silver brought people, Lucas explained. And the railroad's coming soon. Helena will be a proper city before long. They stopped first at the livery to stable their horses, then made their way to the hotel where Lucas secured 2 rooms just until we can see the preacher, he assured her with a smile that made her blush. The hotel had a bathhouse, and Nora spent a blissful hour soaking away the dust of travel, then dressed in the one good outfit she'd purchased at the trading post. Looking in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The frightened bride in chains was gone, replaced by a woman with confidence in her eyes and color in her cheeks. Lucas was waiting for her in the hotel lobby, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he offered his arm with a formality that made her smile. I thought we might visit the church, he suggested as they stepped onto the boardwalk. See if the preacher's available. The Reverend Thomas welcomed them warmly, listening to their story, an abbreviated version that omitted some of the more dramatic details with sympathetic attention. I'd be honored to perform the ceremony, he said when they'd finished. But I must ask, Miss Adams, are you certain this is what you want? There's no pressure or obligation. I'm certain, Nora replied without hesitation. Lucas gave me freedom, but loving him is my choice. The Reverend nodded, satisfied. Then shall we say tomorrow at noon? That will give me time to arrange for witnesses. They spent the afternoon exploring Helena, hand in hand like any courting couple. Lucas pointed out landmarks he remembered from previous visits, while Nora marveled at the diversity of people and businesses crammed into the growing town. At the general store, Lucas insisted on buying Nora a simple but pretty blue dress for the wedding. Something that's just yours, he explained, not a hand-me-down or a necessity. It's beautiful, she said, running her fingers over the soft fabric, but you don't need to spend your savings on me. Let me do this, he said quietly. I want tomorrow to be perfect for you. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Nora dressed carefully in her new blue dress, arranging her hair as best she could without help. A knock at her door revealed a young girl bearing a small bouquet of late-blooming wildflowers. Mr. Xavier asked me to bring these, the girl said shyly. He said they're not as pretty as you, but they'll have to do. Nora thanked her, burying her face in the colorful blooms to hide her emotion. Lucas's thoughtfulness continued to surprise her in the most wonderful ways. The church was simple but welcoming. sunlight streaming through plain glass windows to illuminate the wooden pews and altar. The Reverend waited at the front along with Lucas, who turned when Nora entered. The look on his face as she walked toward him, wonder, joy, and something deeper that made her heart race, was everything she could have hoped for. This was nothing like her first wedding, with its calculated arrangements and cold formality. This was a beginning chosen freely, with full hearts and open eyes. "Dearly beloved," the Reverend began, his voice warm in the quiet church, "we are gathered here to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. When it came time for vows, Lucas took Nora's hands in his voice steady as he promised to cherish, respect, and protect her all the days of his life. When it was her turn, Nora looked into the eyes of the man who had broken her chains and helped her find strength she didn't know she possessed. "I promise to stand beside you as your equal partner," she said, "to support your dreams as you've supported mine and to love you faithfully for all our days. By the authority vested in me," the Reverend concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Lucas's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, sealing their vows as the small gathering of witnesses, mostly church members, the Reverend had invited, applauded. As they walked back down the aisle, now husband and wife, Nora felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This marriage, unlike her first, was founded on mutual respect and genuine affection. With Lucas, she wasn't property to be owned but a partner to be cherished. Outside the church, bathed in autumn sunlight, Lucas drew her close. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not one," she assured him, rising on tiptoe to kiss him again. "Our story may have started with broken chains, but that was just the beginning." Lucas smiled, the special smile she now knew was reserved only for her. "And what a story we'll write together, Mrs. Xavier." Hand in hand, they walked down Helena's main street toward their future, two people who had found in each other not just freedom, but home.